Hey guys, how's it going? Give me one sec. This isn't the first slide. Oh damn, we've lost my font, but we've got a far nicer font from Sketch to Shipping. But I'm Ben Harris. We're a team of creative technologists and designers, and we've developed a pipeline of products, an interactive recipe platform, and a pipeline of products that talk to it, so that we call Drop. And right now, we've just finished manufacturing of our very first product, Drop, an iPad connected kitchen scale, and we're going to be shipping that to 56 countries in the next couple of weeks. And I'd like to just step back and just give you a little insight into our story and how we've gotten to this stage. So as I was saying, we're a team of creative technologists with a real love of great food, but we didn't start purely in the kitchen space. I'm an industrial designer myself. I've had a real interest in food for the last few years. I developed a perfect egg boiler that can make perfectly hard or soft-boiled eggs without as easy as using a toaster. A meringue maker at the same time as well. We've got Johnny McCauley, who's an award-winning interaction and graphic designer, former creative director of New York-based digital agency Lively Group. We've got Jack Phelan, who's former Google employee. He's an amazing hardware hacker. He's developed, sort of hacked his home a little bit, but he's done all sorts of amazing projects like robots that can cycle in and out of inanimate objects or ring its bell when it sees a human. And then we've got Tim Redfern, who's an amazing firmware and software developer, and he's worked on projects like Playhouse, which turned Ireland's tallest building into an interactive screen. And then we've got Zachary Davison, who's our head iOS developer, who was lead developer on Soundwave, and an app that in its first 3 months had over 600,000 users. So with that really creative team, people have asked us sort of where do we come up with the idea essentially, and we didn't jump straight into the kitchen market. So we had 2 prosumer electronics products, we had 1 home DIY product at the same time, but it was and then 2 products in the kitchen. And it was only after stepping back and looking at that whole pipeline and where we wanted to go that we really focused on the kitchen in particular. So we realized that it was like the most shared content on Pinterest right now is recipes. The most YouTube food subscription channels have gone up 250% year on year for the last few years. So people are really looking for a new way to consume recipes. So with all that in mind, we developed our interactive recipe platform. But we really needed to stay flexible as we were doing that. And I think that's something that's really important for a startup or anyone going down this stage. I think if we had just put those blinkers on at the start and said, okay, we're developing these like prosumer electronics and home DIY products and all these different products that would start to talk to your home hub, which was your iPad at the time or your iPhone at the time, that we would have missed a trick with the kitchen specifically, and somewhere where we feel has been really completely overlooked by this new wave of connected products. So this is Drop. It's, as I was saying, yeah, an iPad connected kitchen scale that can walk you through making any recipe. So it's a completely interactive recipe platform. So we've got Stefan Stocky, one of the original guys from La Boulange, who's helping to curate those original recipes. We've also got great bakers back home in Dublin, and we've got Food 52, a brilliant recipe platform here, based out of here in New York, who are helping to provide some of those recipes as well. But this product is definitely the confluence of content, community, and hardware. But I'm just going to focus on the hardware for the next little bit as well. So something that we really wanted to focus on is keeping as much of the design and development in-house. So about a year ago, we moved on to Highway 1, PCH International's hardware accelerator. And it was with them that PCH have enabled us to bring this product to market. And they've put us in touch with some brilliant retailers that we're looking forward to announcing in the next little while. But it was even with a company with the caliber of PCH International, they manufacture all the Beats headphones, 80% of Apple's Apple's accessories as well, that we still had a few issues along the way. So we focused early on keeping the BOM price down as much as possible. So, and the way we've found that again and again through all my product development experience beforehand is making sure that you keep your component levels down as much as possible. So we wanted to minimize that. We've also, one of the great things about having a connected device is you can shift as many of the components off from the hardware device itself, like no need for screens, no need for buttons, and really maximizing everything that's on the iPad or the iPhone itself. And then, yeah, even having a company like PCH International, we still had lots of issues in hardware development as we were going through the mass production stage. And it was the debugging issue that we found most interesting. Having an amazing production line set up, and still we had multiple issues that the only way I can explain it is just that whack-a-mole syndrome. You know, we'd find one issue, we'd squash it, and then we'd find another issue in another place. Like in particular, there was one problem that we were having that you'd take out the scale, you'd calibrate it, you'd put a weight on top of it, it would read correct at around 5 kilos, and then the weight would start to slowly drop. And no matter what, we had to stop production. We were on a very tight deadline because we decided to go with retail straight from the get-go, which means that you have a hard stop, especially coming into a Christmas season like this. So you can't push that deadline back. And as we got closer to that, and as the clock was ticking, we sent our hardware developer and firmware developer out to BCH as well. So first of all, we thought it was a firmware issue. It was only coming up in about 5 to 10% of units. The problem with firmware debugging is you've got to go through the whole code. You can't be sure what it is. We uploaded a few new firmwares, and then all of a sudden it would start working again. From there, then it wouldn't work again. Then what we did was, we thought it was a dodgy MCU. So what we got the guys in the assembly line was to actually take the whole product apart, put a new MCU on, put it back together, and that seemed to solve the issue. It turns out that the actual issue was a purely mechanical issue. Once you get up to shipping thousands of units, there was one screw that was being over-tightened, which was pulling the base a tiny bit to the right. It meant that we were actually getting friction as the top part and the bottom part of the scale were rubbing against each other. And when they were opening up the product to change the firmware and close it back up again, we kept thinking that the problem was actually addressed. But they were only taking it apart and reassembling it a slightly different way. So it seemed like the product was haunted at the time, but we finally got round to finding out what the issue was after a week of crazy scrambling. And then from there, one of the things that we really needed to focus on was with issues like this, because we have both content, community, and the hardware piece, and we're moving into retail at the same side, there's loads of different plates to keep spinning and lots of thread to keep threading, essentially. But we just needed to, from a team point of view, make sure that we weren't playing like the 7-a-side 6-year-old football, or soccer, as you guys call it over here, and just running to the ball, all hands on deck, trying to figure out the firmware issue, because if that happened, oh no, wrong way. Obviously, one of the big issues for us in particular was to make sure that we kept all our plates spinning, because there were so many little bits and bobs that we needed to keep going. But no, we're delighted now to be through all that now and to be shipping this fall for $99.95 off our own website, getdrop.com as well. But I'd love to answer any questions that you guys might have on the production process to hear.
Do you have any for sale tonight?
I don't have them. I've got one here that I could show you later. I can give you a quick demo as well. Yeah.
So, can you tell us a little bit about what kind of testing you have to do on the final hardware on the production side?
first of all, the jigs we had to set up to make sure that everything was aligned. There was a huge amount of work that went into that itself. But from a testing point of view afterwards, we're capturing issues at 3 different sections. First, at the end of the product pipeline, at the end of the first line, where we put on 2 kilos onto every single scale and make sure it's still within a single gram. And we do that same test just before it gets boxed. And then there's 1 step in between that we do that at the same time. But from a first off prototype, 1 in every 500 units we take out, we do a 1 meter drop test. We make sure everything still works after it as well. And there's humidity tests. That's the amazing thing. Once you get up to those higher quantities, when you're like having to test at 70% humidity for on a rumbling road, on a rumble road for I think 4 or 5 hours to make sure that vibration wasn't going to have an effect on it as it's being shipped across China and across to the States and globally from there. It's amazing that inside a container, I think you can get temperatures in there can get up to 70 degrees centigrade with a really high humidity as well. So it's trying to capture all those things early on as well.
Great. I'm just wondering, for the production line, did you need to create tests at different stages along the production line, and what sort of tests would they be in? Is there firmware for that, or testings? I'm just curious. Thank you.
Yeah, we developed specific firmware, so it's just this. It's really interesting. Actually, our firmware and software developer, he's, as I was saying earlier, an amazing software developer. He hadn't done much firmware as of about a year ago. He hadn't done any iOS development 2.5 months ago, but he's made 2 apps since, both which sit on the production line for uploading the firmware and testing the units as well. The interesting thing is, naively, we made those apps in the first place in English, so we've just recently translated them to Chinese.
More questions? Did you personally like the idea of the scale that if you wait and then drops progressively?
Yeah.
Really good for humans.
Yeah, no, that's not a bad idea.
Any? Okay, cool. Well, thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you.